Hope you're having a great day out there. We want to thank you for joining us, spending part of the day right here on Aspire to Retire with Ralph and Tim Short, father-son team behind Welcome Home Financial Partners. You can go online to the website, welcomehomefp.com, find out more about them, the entire team, set up a time to speak with them. Again, welcomehomefp.com. The number 804-635-3550. 3 offices here in the Richmond location, in the Richmond area. But the number's the same. It'll get you where you need to go. 804-635-3550. My name is Chris Swan, and I'm pleased to be joined, as always, by the two gentlemen, the best-looking gentlemen in radio, Ralph and Tim. Glad to be with you. How are you today?
Doing good. Doing very well.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear it. Appreciate you guys taking time out of your schedule to spend with the listeners here as they get ready to embark on this next chapter known as retirement. So here we are. Mid-February, post-Valentine's Day, thankfully. Chocolate's half price right now, by the way.
So are roses.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great time. If you, we won't get into that. But so halfway through February already, and the year's not really changing the story much when it comes to the stock market. Still plenty of volatility and renewed concerns that this so-called AI bubble of stocks leading the way is going to burst. Here's TIAA CEO Jacinda Brown-Duckett recently on CNBC.
I think the real question is not knowing if it's going to burst or boom. It's about making sure you'll be prepared for retirement. And I think the most important thing is first to make sure you stay invested. Make sure you're diversified. It's not about timing the market. It's about how much time you put in the market. And as we think about that diversification, how do we ensure that there's income within it? Income has to be the outcome. And how do we make sure that you can have that guaranteed income that you can depend on month after month, regardless of what that volatility may look like?
She said 2 things there that sound pretty familiar to me. It's not the timing the market, it's time in the market, and income is the outcome that matters. It's like she's been listening to the show. But let's talk about diversification, because when people hear that word, they're usually thinking stocks and bonds, but she's talking about diversifying income sources. How do people go about doing that, and what are the benefits to potentially doing that?
Well, she hit it spot on. I mean, no matter what time or whatever we're in, there's going to be, things that are going to sway the market either for the upside or for the downside. Right. And I agree. I think she has been listening to the show because we say a lot of the same things that she just said. And, diversification is one of those terms that's thrown out in the industry that people don't necessarily know and say, hey, well, guess what? Diversifying means I'm going to have 1 million different shares of 1 million different companies, right? And that's not it, right? So, but what she's specifically speaking on is diversification of income. And, a lot of people these days, they save all their money in 401ks and TSPs and that nature, and they think, hey, I'm going to get to retirement. I'm just going to start picking away at that pile of money, right? That's not diversifying your income, right? How about taking some of that money out and put it somewhere where you can guarantee that monthly income, whether it's an annuity or not? There's different strategies to go about that. And I think that's the most important thing, because the more checks that you've got coming your way in retirement, probably the better off you're going to be. And I can tell you, there's so many of our clients that are satisfied with the amount of checks that they're getting. Not one of them says, hey, we don't need that money today. We don't need that money this month.
I'm getting too much money.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So you don't run into that. So, I think that's important. It's not just taking a look at overall your investments, but it's also your income in retirement.
But I would also say you need to understand, where's that income or where's that paycheck coming from when you start thinking about this. Part of it's going to be from Social Security. Part of it may be from your pension. But then if you've just got your 401ks and stuff, how are you going to withdraw that, like Tim was talking about? Are you just picking it away? Or what are you going to do with that money? Do you want to make sure you have income for the rest of your life? Most people, most of our clients, in fact, all of our clients, they don't want to run out of money. What about you, Chris? Do you want to run out of money when you actually retire?
I was going to say, I may have run out of money from time to time, but I don't want to. I don't intend to. In my younger days, I'm doing okay now, I promise. But it is the number one concern, right? People, do I have enough? And people living longer, we're going to talk about that in a second. But if they've got consistent sources of income coming in, Social Security, the pension, if they've got the luxury of that. But if they don't have a pension, they can't solely rely on their 401k or their TSPs, things like that, because that is volatile. That does fluctuate. Absolutely. And so, you don't want to, we said it so often, regardless of what the market is doing, your monthly expenditures are going to come in. And the power company, the grocery store doesn't care if the market is down. They still need money for what they're doing. So is there a way to replicate or duplicate, a pension-like income so that it's coming in regardless of what the market's doing?
Yeah, there's absolutely ways of doing it, and that's very important, because now you don't want to stick everything into one particular vehicle or investment or whatever, right? So you want to make sure that, hey, maybe we can guarantee X amount of dollars a month, but have the ability for that to still grow, right? But then still leave some money in the market. So if the market takes a downturn, if the AI boom bursts or whatever, and guess what? That's fine, because we have the ability to ride that roller coaster a little bit easier. Nowadays, people make so many irrational decisions based off of emotions. If you've got all that money in that 401k and it goes down and that's where you're pulling that money from, guess what? You're probably going to sell at least portion of that.
Right.
And that's one of the biggest mistakes that you can make, because we're always told that you're supposed to buy low and sell high. People do it the opposite because they start thinking with their heart, not their brain, right? So I think it's important to say, okay, hey, if we do have that $1 million in this 401k, how do we diversify not just the investments, but the income? Maybe taking some of that if we want X amount of dollars, not just because we need it, but because we want it, right? Most people, it's more about what we want in retirement, not necessarily what we need.
Sure.
So if we want $5,000 on top of Social Security or whatever, well, let's do the math there. And if we can say, hey, let's take X amount of dollars, stick it here, and we can guarantee that income, why not? And then we still have money left over in another investment vehicle that can ride that roller coaster. That's where you'll have, some other things that you can do, but you've got to make sure that you've got those checks coming.
And I would also say most people, when they hear that word diversification, they see all these different stocks and bonds that they're talking about. But you also need to understand there's other ways of diversification when it comes to taxes. So do you have all your money in a taxable investment? So when you start pulling it out, you're going to have to pay taxes on that amount. And at that same time and point, you're going to have less money coming in at that time. So why not thinking about pulling some money out or having some investments that may be tax-free to you or tax-deferred, whatever. Those are some ways of diversifying your income stream so you don't have to worry about maybe paying the taxes on it, so you may not have to take out as much money as you did if it was taxable.
Yeah, and not only to say, people are living longer, supposedly, right? That's the trend.
Yeah.
But there's also people who want to retire earlier, right? So if we compound the fact of, hey, we might live to 90, 95, or 100, but we want to retire at 50 instead. The norm used to be 65, right? So if we live another 40 or 50 years in retirement, we've got to compensate.
That's almost as much more time in retirement than in the working world.
Sure. And you got to think of inflation too. Is okay, hey, if we want that $5,000 a month, well, $5,000 a month today is not what it's going to be in a year or 10 years, right? To bring up kind of a quick little story on inflation, this just happened to me. My wife owns a preschool, right? And she's got these little, I call them the short buses, but I know that's not what I'm supposed to call them.
I understand, yeah.
But they're short passenger vans, right? It's, I guess a bus still. And I think it holds 20 to 25 people. Back in 2019, she bought 2 brand new ones, same vendor, same company, same finance company. Okay. It is the same price as it was for both of them today as it is for one.
Oh, geez.
So if you take a look at that, that was from 2019 till now.
Yeah.
So what's that, 7 years, right? Give or take. I don't remember the exact timing. But that's important because, if we live another 30 or 40 or maybe even 50 years in retirement, you've got to compensate for those things. And I can guarantee you, if you live 50 years in retirement, along that way, you're probably going to have to buy another vehicle, right? So that's very important.
Certainly.
Very important.
And I would say that you need to understand if you, right now, we are paying more for vehicles, cars, trucks, whatever you want to use, than we were when I first bought my first house.
I was going to say, yeah.
So that's what's called inflation. We don't worry about the percentages because those are just numbers. But when you actually take a look at how much it costs you in dollars and cents, that's when it really hits home, because who would have ever imagined that you'd be paying $100,000 for a vehicle to take you from point A to point B? And we're not talking about Lamborghinis anymore.
I was going to say, you got to stay away from those Maseratis, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't even want to know what the Maseratis are costing these days, but the buying power of your dollar will decrease over time. That's just inflation in a nutshell. And so income for life is well and good, but income for lifestyle is really what it's all about. So having something that has that growth potential, which means you're going to have money in the market because you really can't beat the growth potential in the market. But I want everyone to think of diversification kind of like a table at a bar or a restaurant. Maybe you were there for the Super Bowl or you've been out and about, and you always get the one with the wobbly leg. Mm-hmm. And there's one wobbly leg, and typically they might have coasters or sugar packets under that prop it up. Doesn't work, it's debatable. But I'm not going to lean on that side of the table. Think of diversification with your income as the same sort of thing. You've got different legs of your table, and if the market is underperforming or X, Y, or Z is underperforming, that's not the one you want to rely on for that. If you are less diversified, let's say you only have 2 legs on your stool or 1 leg on your stool and it's wobbly, guess what? You're going to fall over. So you want to make sure that you've got a plan in place that regardless of what the market is doing, not to say take money out of the market, but regardless of what the market is doing, regardless of what the outside factors are, control what you can't control, right? You've still got that money coming in because at the end of the day, that is what matters. Income is the outcome, as she said, as we say so often here on the show. So if you have questions about how to make that work, how to put together that complimentary retirement roadmap, that's what the team at Welcome Financial Partners does. All you have to do to get started, set up a time to speak with them. It is complimentary. You can go to welcomehomefp.com or give a call, 804-635-3550. And we said it earlier, and it is statistically, we've got the numbers to back it up. Americans are actually living longer. The CDC's numbers show that life expectancy as a whole rose to 79 years, which is the highest it's been in American history. Women, the life expectancy rose about half a year, 81.4 now. Life expectancy for men also went up about half a year, 76 and a half, which is great news, right? People living longer, something that should be celebrated, until that income now has to last 30 years instead of 20, or if people are retiring at 55, 40 years instead of 20. So what are the most common mistakes that you see when people underestimate how long their retirement actually will be?
Well, I think everybody's going to be a little bit different. We had a guy come in and he worked for a national grocery food chain, and he flat out told me, hey, I've got 10 years left. This guy was 60 years old, right? And I'm like, well, how can you tell me that? Now, granted, I could tell he probably wasn't in the best shape, but you just don't know, right? So, but he was super adamant about, hey, this plan's going to be based around 10 years. And it's like, no, it's not, because, there's so many people that plan on, okay, hey, the average mortality is, whatever age. Well, there's so many people now that are living longer. We see so many people that make it to 100. Right. So it's important to factor that in, and not just, taking a stat or age or a number and planning around that. You've got to plan for the possibilities, right? Mm-hmm. There's a possibility of us living to 100 or beyond.
Absolutely.
So that's, I think, what's the biggest mistake that we see is so many people just say, well, you know what, I'm probably going to live to 80. My father passed away at 75. I might be a little bit better health than him. You don't want to do that, because if you live much longer, then your plan's not going to work out.
Right.
And I would say we have a couple different types of clients that we have. Some of them will come in and say they don't need this money. They want to pass everything they have on to their kids.
Great.
Which is great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Absolutely, it's great.
But, yeah, you would say that, wouldn't you? But at the same time, we also have other people that will come in and say, listen, this is my money. This is my 401k. I worked, get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and get home at 8 o'clock at night, 6 days a week. This is my money. I worked hard for it. Nobody else did. So guess what? I don't want to leave anything to anybody. I want to spend my last dollar the day that I die. I'm like,
That's
okay,
all right, yeah.
That's pretty easy to do. It's simple mathematics, but you got to answer one question for me. And they say, well, what is that? You have to tell me the date of your death, because then I just put in an equation and I can tell you exactly how much you can spend. Guess what, Chris? Nobody has told me the date of their death yet.
Yeah,
so
I can't imagine.
You have to kind of worry about, what if you're wrong? What if you say, I'm going to live 10 years like Tim was talking about that client, and you live 20 and you already spent all your money? Mm-hmm. What are you going to do? Go back to work? Or are you going to go back to, homeless shelter or what? That's the thing that you have to worry about, because in this day and age, we don't know what's going to happen. You can go outside and live for another 40 years, or you can get hit by a Mack truck on Interstate 95 going through the city of Richmond. It's just, you just don't know, particularly with these Richmond drivers, right, Tim?
Well, I think drivers everywhere have gotten a little sketchy.
That's
but
probably true, yeah.
Yeah, I think, as we age, normally our health digresses, right? Mm-hmm. So you've got to compensate for that as well. And, if we say, okay, hey, we were only going to live another 10 years, bringing this gentleman back up, if we're only going to live 10 years, well, what if you hit that 10th year mark and now you're in a nursing home, right? And you live another 10, most people don't live 10 more years in a nursing home. It's usually about 3, but that's something that you got to account for. So it's not just necessarily what you're spending now. It's also, we got to fast forward another 20 or 30 years. So those are things that you got to take into account, not just here and now. You got to live for today, but you got to plan for your future.
But you can, the question everybody asks, can I outlive my money? Yeah, that's a possibility if you don't plan properly. If you say, a client that came in that has $2.5 million, and he was almost 60 years old. He says, I'm going to retire. I don't have to worry about it. I got plenty of money. I'm going to do whatever I want to do. I said, well, you probably do, but let's take a look at our plan.
Just in case.
Let's go through our roadmap process and go see if you can or not. Mm-hmm. So we were sitting there talking, and his plan when he went to retire was to take his wife and spend $20,000 a month on trips. And I looked at him and I said, okay, that's fine. I said, let's take a look at this, just simple mathematics.
As I'm writing here,
you're looking
at,
you're looking at about $250,000 a year just on vacations. Mm-hmm. That's not anything other than, that's not your living expenses and stuff like that. So how long is $2.5 million going to last if you take $250,000 out.
Just over 10 based on that, yeah.
Without any interest and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of looked at me and goes, well, I didn't look at it that way. I said, well, how else can you look at it? But those are things that you have to have a plan. It's not what it is in your head. It's an actual written down plan, and you can look at it and touch it and feel it and say, is this going to work? If it's not, how can I adjust it? If you've got it in your head, you don't ever know what it's going to be like. You have to have it written down. You have to understand the ramifications of your actions today, how it's going to affect you down the road.
And but there's so many people out there that are visual, right? Especially my wife is one of them. Anytime we start talking about some sort of project, she's like, I got to see it. And I was like, can't you just visualize it in your mind? But this is kind of the same thing is, hey, if you put it together and it's on a sheet of paper, it's a lot easier to comprehend instead of, okay, hey, like you were jotting down the math, right? It's a lot easier to visualize it that way instead of just, oh, okay, I've got this big pot of money.
And the other thing that you do need to understand, what would happen if you planned for it to be out to last 30 years and you only lasted 10? Was that anything wrong with that? You've planned, you didn't have to worry about anything. Mm-hmm. Somebody else is going to get the money, understand that, but you didn't have to worry about, am I going to run out of money?
Right.
So I don't think having a plan that might last longer than you do, that's the goal in my opinion.
Absolutely, that's the goal.
So you shouldn't worry about not planning. You should worry about.
We mentioned in the previous question about needs versus wants, and it's a good time to bring up the fact that Ralph and Tim Short, they are fiduciaries, which means acting in the client's best interest, which means that sometimes they don't tell them what they want to hear. They don't tell the clients what they want to hear. They tell them what they need to hear. And you guys, I don't think, would be acting in the client's best interest if you made a plan that only lasted 10 years, because what happens 10 and a half years down the road and they're still around, you go, sorry about that.
Yeah, exactly. And you got to think of the surviving spouse. And
right.
That's part of it as well. Now, there's some people who aren't married and never intend on getting married, and there's no other, right? Mm-hmm. But, there's a lot of people, especially in our market, that say, one person was the breadwinner. Well, if that person passes away and they had a pension where they only took the single life payout, well, guess what? There's a check gone. Social Security, guess what? That's another check on. Yeah, you'll keep the higher benefit, but Chris, do you want to lose a check?
Not really.
Regardless if your check was $3,000 and the other one was $1,000, I don't want to lose $1,000, right? So those are all things that come into that plan too, because it's not just that individual, unless it is literally that only individual.
Again, it's about putting together that plan just to make sure that the money is there, the money lasts as long as you do, however long that is going to be, and we certainly hope that is, a long, fruitful, healthy life, but one ideally without worry. And if you've got money coming in consistently, like we talked about earlier, it can go a long way to alleviating that worry. It's part of that retirement roadmap process, and it begins, by listening to the show. So thank you for doing that. The next step, of course, is letting Ralph and Tim put pen to paper and start crafting that retirement roadmap for you. 804-635-3550 is how you get started. Complimentary conversation, whether it is on the phone, whether it is coming into one of their 3 offices in the Richmond location, attending their First Friday events that they've got going on. You can find out more about those, by the way, by going to the website, welcomehomefp.com, or the number, once again, 804-635-3550. So, taking longevity into account, let's talk Social Security. If people are living longer, it makes sense to wait as long as possible to get the biggest check, right? Well, a woman wrote into an advice column saying waiting until 70 to take Social Security was the worst decision in her life. She is getting about $5,000 a month. She would have gotten about half of that had she filed at 62. So on paper, that looks great. Here's the problem. Life isn't lived in monthly installments. Her words, I spent years telling myself I was being responsible by waiting, watching friends travel, and enjoying their early retirement while I kept working. Sure, my check is larger now, but at what cost? The money I'm finally receiving can't buy back the health and energy I had in my 60s. So what can we take away from this story?
Well, I think this is a big topic too, because Social Security, is always, I guess can't say always, but it's been in jeopardy for quite some time. Right? People don't quite know what the outcome's going to be. Nobody does, right? But there's ways that you can maximize Social Security, but that doesn't necessarily fit inside of your retirement plan, if you will, because there are some people that come in, they call from the radio show, they call from our TV shows, and they say, hey, you know what, I'm going to claim at 62 because I don't know where Social Security is going to be. I'm not getting any younger. I'm just going to go ahead and take it. Well, if you're still working, you're going to run into some issues. If you're not working, we talked about like surviving spouses. You could run into issues with that too. So you got to take a look at everything as a whole, right? Not just, hey, we've got this X amount for Social Security. We've got this pension if we're fortunate enough. All of these things come into play. But also, too, is we don't know what our health is going to look like in 8 years, right? From 62 to 70. Talked about it earlier. As we get older, usually we digress as far as health is concerned. So, these are things that we take a look at as, we can show you how to maximize. There's strategies out there, and we can kind of build that up for you. But on the same token, is we don't know the variables, right? We don't know where health is going to go. We don't know where all of this is going to take place. So I think it's important to, when it comes to Social Security and when to claim, that needs to fit inside your overall retirement plan and not just say, hey, if I wait till 70, yes, that's the most you're going to receive. What if you don't get to 70? Right. Or what if you die at 71? Then you waited for no reason, right? So you had a higher check for 12 months. Congratulations.
That's
right?
great.
But the government was happy, right? But that's where you really got to focus in on your plan. But life happens. Things are going to change. So you want to make sure that your plan's going to change too, because we could say, hey, the best strategy for your overall retirement plan is to wait to age 70 for whatever reason, right? Between spouses, this, that, and the other. But then if, you have a massive heart attack and now you've got all these health issues, well, maybe now it's time to change course and say, okay, maybe we'll do this. But I think one of the biggest mistakes that happens when it comes to delaying Social Security to 70 is people start drawing down on their assets.
Right.
What do we have more control over, Social Security or our assets?
Social Security. Am I wrong? Our assets.
So I think, we can claim. We know when we can claim, right?
Right.
But also, too, is if we go 8 years, if we retire at 60, let's call it, and we start drawing down on our assets for 10 years just for Social Security to build up to the highest amount, well, if we started with $1 million, maybe we don't have $1 million anymore, right? Maybe we have $300,000. Well, great. We still have a monthly check coming in, and it's the highest amount, but that didn't fit with our plan because we started with $1 million. Now we're at $300,000. But yes, we got a higher Social Security check. So these are all things that we talk about.
And I would say to her or to you, Chris, there's no way that we can explain what she should be doing with the amount of information that we're receiving here.
Right.
If she had retired at age 62 or just said, I'm going to continue work, I just want my Social Security to use to maybe go on those trips when I can, not have to worry about where it's coming from. That's one thing. But guess what? If you're taking that, like Tim was talking about, if you take it at age 62 and still working, what happens? All of a sudden, you're going to have to maybe give some of that back, if not all of it. So that's not anything you want to claim to give it back. So we don't know enough about this story, but those are things that we actually sit down with people when they start thinking about when to take Social Security, how it's going to affect them all the way around. And it's just a lot of people hear the buzzword Social Security is going bankrupt. Well, we don't know that.
Right.
Is it going to change between now and the next 20 years? I am pretty sure it's going to change.
Probably.
Not the way it is today, but what is it going to be like? We don't know. You have to worry and plan with things that you've got complete control over. And whatever the government does is not anything that you got control over because they just don't know what they're doing. But I think Social Security is going to be around because I think there would be another American Revolution if they got rid of Social Security for American people. Now, is it going to be the same? Probably not. But you just deal with what you've got to deal with.
We've talked about it being, political suicide for the congressman or the politician that goes, we're getting rid of Social Security. If that's the end of their career. They're going to have a retirement. In the same way that we talked about the difference between income for life and income for lifestyle, there is a significant difference between Social Security maximization and Social Security optimization. Maximization is easy. Wait until 70, claim then. That's the biggest check. But what if you need it beforehand? What if you're missing out on this lifestyle? As this lady's pointing out, there's a lot of factors in there, and I have to throw it out there. The people at the Social Security office, that's not what they're there for. They're not there to give you that advice legally. They're prohibited from giving you that advice. So you want to go ahead and do that legwork beforehand, see how that fits in to your retirement roadmap. Good news is you don't have to do it alone. The team at Welcome Home Financial Partners, Ralph Short, Tim Short, and the entire team can help you with that and put it together as part of your retirement roadmap. To get started, give a call, 804-635-3550. Once again, 804-635-3550. You can also go online to the website, set up a time there. It is complimentary, welcomehomefp.com. So it's not quite spring yet, but I do know that people are starting the cleaning process, the spring cleaning. And so I'm asking you guys, but also not asking you guys, how often do you clean your home? There's a new report that found that the average person considers their home to be completely clean for all of 11 days of the year. People say they spend about 6 days total cleaning their home. So Not the greatest percentage, but there's no arguing that cleaning is an ongoing, persistent chore. If you're considering laundry in that cleaning process, mine is never ending. It always happens. But portfolio reviews, they're the same sort of thing. So, okay, I will ask, how often do you guys consider your house actually clean? And then how often do you like to give those portfolios a review and a scrubbing?
Well, I will tell you that changes with life, right? So,
Sure.
As we get older, obviously, two of my kids are no longer living at home, and they used to have those chores, which sometimes kids love to do, and sometimes they don't love to do.
Fair.
So I only have one child left at the house, but I do have 3 Great Danes, so I can tell you that my house doesn't stay clean very long.
Sure.
But on average, you clean on the weekend, you clean once a week, and go from there. But it depends on the weather. If it's rainy, obviously muddy big paws make it a little bit more of a mess. If we have a dry spell, cleaning might last a little bit longer. But, when it comes down to the portfolios, I think there's a lot of folks out there that think, they're day traders and we got to take a look at buying and selling every day. That's not what you need to do, right? If you're 20 years old and you want to play around, sure, that's great. But once you get closer to retirement, I met with a lady not too long ago that's kind of where she was. And in 2020, she made quite a bit of money. And then she lost it all. Wow. And she's still very aggressive, and she's approaching 60, and she wants to retire. And she flat out told me, you are going to have to hold my hand, and you're going to have to get these thoughts out of my mind because I can't continue to do this.
At least she's aware, yeah.
Yeah, and she's our own worst enemy. She's said it before. So, I think it's important, when it comes down to reviews and portfolio analysis and all of that, you need to do it more frequent than not, right? You don't just set it and forget it, but, that could be one time a year, it could be once a quarter, but, you've got to make sure that you're not doing too many changes, too many additions, too many subtractions, because that's where you're going to get in trouble. Like we talked about earlier, it's not about timing the market, it's about the time in the market.
And I would say for most people, the worst thing that they can do is have the TV on 24/7, looking at the stock market and what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I know that during the 2008 financial crisis, people were just beside themselves, calling up and stuff. I said the best thing that you can do for yourself is to cut off the TV, read a book or whatever, but do not pay attention to that, because right now you're going to have a knee-jerk reaction that may not benefit you later down the road. I'll give you the perfect example when COVID hit. In that March of 2020, when things went down like they did, we had a lady that called in off TV program and said, I've got to see you. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I've lost so much money. And I said, well, the best thing that you can do, I said, we can sit down and talk to you. So we set up an appointment for 2 days later. She comes in, and before she came in, she had sold everything that she had and now wants to know what she needs to do. And I'm like, well, you've already done it. I mean, you've lost how much? She had lost $300,000 in those 2-day period of time.
That's a costly 2 days.
Yeah. So, and guess what happened? By the end of the year, it was back up to where it was.
Yeah.
But it didn't help her hardly at all because she'd already taken it off. Those are called knee-jerk emotional reaction that you don't understand how it's going to affect you in your future down the road. So you got to be aware of that. That's why we hold hands a lot. Even as fiduciaries, we have to hold hands and say, maybe you should kind of calm down, take a breath, and move on.
Now, you guys told the two different sides of that story there. You've got the people who are aware that they will make knee-jerk reactions and say, I need help. I need this discipline with a proper plan to say, we know the market's going to go up, the market's going to go down, but we need to know that we've got a plan that accounts for that. And the people who say, I don't have a plan yet, I'm making these emotional decisions. And more often than not, I'll admit it for myself, when those decisions happen, they're typically not the best ones. Looking back later on, you go, I probably should have handled that a little bit differently. In the same way that people occasionally will, when it comes back to the cleaning thing, people will, have cleaners come in, professionals come in and handle their day to day. Although I think we all are guilty of, if we do that, we do a little pre-cleaning before they show up. Mm-hmm. But the same thing when it comes to portfolio reviews, portfolio cleanups, things like that, having professionals on your side who can walk you through the process, who can hold your hand through the process and, again, tell you what you need to hear versus what you want to hear. Maybe it is staying in the market. Maybe it is, moving assets this way or that way. Maybe it is working a little bit longer just to make sure all the numbers align. That is important at the end of the day because I think the majority of the people out there who also worry about outliving their savings, they want to retire once. If they go back to work, it's out of a desire to, not out of a necessity to. And to do that, I mean, you need a proper plan in place, whether you've got, $500,000, whether you've got $250,000, $2.5 million, having a plan in place, a retirement roadmap, if you will, is the best way to make sure that, you can get to, through, and beyond retirement. But that starts with setting up a time to speak with the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners. You can go to the website, welcomehomefp.com. You can give a call, 804-635-3550. Don't forget, you can catch them on TV. Go to welcomehomefp.com to find that full listing. See the gentleman there on TV. But one way or another, we want to thank you for joining us here on Aspire to Retire with Ralph Short and Tim Short. Hope you have a great week ahead of you. Stay safe out there. Take care of one another. Gentlemen, always appreciate the time. As we wrap up, I'm going to leave you with the final word.
All right. Thank you, Chris. So, yeah, I mean, we talked about spring cleaning. I think we're all getting that itch, waiting for this weather to break after what we've been dealing with. So, we've got some events coming up, especially when springtime really kicks off. So, visit the website, kind of take a look at what we're doing. Call us, RSVP. We'd love to meet you in an informal setting, have a little bit of fun. But give us a call. We'd love to sit here and take a look, do a portfolio scrub, if you will, see what you're doing. I think it's important to not necessarily focus on the investments that you currently have, but it's more about the strategy once we start getting closer to retirement. So we love the opportunity to sit down with you and we can create your very own retirement roadmap for you. But once again, we want to thank everybody for listening and take care.
All content is for information purposes only. It is not intended to provide any tax or legal advice or provide the basis for any financial decision, nor is it intended to be a projection of current or future performance or indication or future results. Opinions expressed herein are solely those of Welcome Home Financial Partners and Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC. The information contained in this material has been derived from sources believed to be reliable, but is not guaranteed as to accuracy and completeness and does not purport to a complete analysis of the materials discussed. All information and ideas should be discussed in detail with your individual advisor prior to the implementation. Each individual investor's situation is different, and any ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstance. Advisor services are offered by Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor in the state of Virginia. Being registered as an investment advisor does not imply a certain level of skill or training. Insurance products and services are offered through WPI Holding, Virginia Insurance License Number 138509, an affiliated company. The information contained herein should in no way be construed or interpreted as a solicitation to sell or offer to sell advisory services to any resident of any state other than the state of Virginia or where otherwise legally permitted. Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC, and Welcome Home Financial Partners are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any government agency.